All right, what is going on, guys? I am Young46, if you don't know, and we're going to talk a little bit about wedge game. So we're going to do a whole improvement series. This is going to focus on more advanced wedges, or a little bit better, but it's applicable to a lot of your wedges, probably above level 30 or so. What I would learn is you need to learn how to play different shots, right? Under 100 yards, you're better players. More than likely they're going to be 5-6 feet away, or most of the time a little bit closer. So learn to play all of your shots, right? So if you go through your wedges, obviously you have the full, that's your normal shot. You have your punch. One of the most undervalued shots I see from players who are still learning the game. It's an amazing shot. You got to get comfortable with it. So really you're focusing more on your punch and your full. Obviously, we'll focus on chips, flop, pitches when we're a little closer to the green. So for this yardage, it's very awkward with my 100-yard wedge, right? I can hit it, and it would just be kind of like a choke down little wedge that we have to hit. One thing I'll point out is hitting the ding. So on this new version or mobile version, early access, whatever you want to call it, hitting the ding, and if you're new to the game, the ding would be this little white line, basically means you got an excellent hit. If you're new to it, it's a little difficult to hit, but there's so much forgiveness on these wedges that you can get away with missing, decently late. So especially into a wind like we have here, a little 2 to 4 wind, it's basically, I would say, about an 80% side wind. We can just miss ding, right? Like, my emphasis isn't on hitting the ding, especially with this wind. I just need to make sure I miss late, right? So a couple different ways we can play this. This would play about 85 yards, 86 yards, right? And you need to chart and know what those numbers are. That's probably the biggest thing. Know exactly what 86 yards is, right? We can play this shot like this. Not a bad shot. Well, crap, guys. It was kind of a good shot. Really ruined my video. Okay, well, let's go right back into it. Don't you hate it when you hole out a shot when you're trying to do a video? I'm gonna go right back to the same course. Hopefully get somewhat of a similar wind. We'll go low wind. Yeah, that's one option you can play there. The little choke down wedge is nice because it controls spin. So if I have a hole where I know I want to be very careful about backspin or something like that, choking down that wedge is going to help control the amount of spin you're going to get. You want to go, it doesn't matter about that. Low winds, practice mode, and get comfortable in practice mode. This is where you get better right here. If you're new to the game and you're really serious about it, you should be spending 15-20 minutes a day minimum, just kind of hanging out in practice mode, hitting different shots, working on your numbers, recharting if you've already charted. Sometimes it's good after you've gone out on the course to take some notes and say, hey, I think this club might actually play this, and then go hit some shots and verify that. But anyway, back. We got 93 yards, which we want to be a little bit further. We want to talk a little bit about punches and things like that. But I will say, one of the mistakes I see is everybody loves backspin, right? We want to put backspin on things. So like this shot, let's say I want to put, some backspin on it. Same thing. I'm just going to miss ding a little early because I really don't need to play. I don't need to move it for this. I just need a little bit of a miss ding. People get really overzealous with spin. This is why you don't really want to use spin on wedge. This doesn't help us. Can we hit some fun shots and maybe hold it? Yes. But this is a very scoreable hole. And what I've done now is I've just put myself in a position where I've got to make a pretty lengthy putt, really just focusing on lagging it from this point, right? Whereas if I just play this neutral spin, right, we play this about 94, 95 yards. Same misting if I can. Oh, we're misting on the other side, but we get the heartbeat. And we've controlled spin, right? It just kind of sits. It doesn't release on us. Most of the time, if you have a wedge, above level 40 or 50, you're not going to see a lot of release out of it. So neutral spin is always my preference. Neutral or top spin. Right? Top spin is undervalued for sure. I'm going to hit this a little pitch up here just so I can put myself in a little bit better position here. I want to be probably about 10 yards or so up where I am now. Now we've got 82 yards. Again, I could hit this club and I could choke down. Probably not my preference, but you can do it if you've got it really charted. But once you start getting below like 85%, it gets a little touchy. So from this shot, I would recommend a flat punch. Again, get comfortable with all of your shots, especially here, right? When I'm hitting into elevation, it's only uphill 4 feet, right? Obviously, just like in real golf, when you hit a punch, you're de-lofting the club. I don't necessarily want to hit a punch into maybe like a severe uphill slope, unless I'm factoring in release and things like that. But for this shot, I would say just go ahead and hit 83 yards. Again, we're just going to miss a little bit early, or try to play that punch. Most people think it's going to release out of time. It's very controllable. It's the perfect amount of release to hole out, right, on this shot with this club. We hit it pin high right to a foot. So again, just learn these, learn them, right? And then if you have shots where maybe it's got a severe back to front slope and you want to kill it a little bit, we can go full top here, right? And we're going to hit this about 83 yards or so. We can go full top, same misting. Again, we're not going to, we didn't get the heartbeat, but we're not going to get a ton of, forward release. It's about the same, really. Get comfortable, know your distances, right? You got to play around with all of your shots. Punch, full, you name it. Do that for your sand wedge. Obviously, we want to do this wedge, every wedge. Punch and full. You should know numbers out of any type of lie, right? 40-50, knock it in 40-50. Go see where it lands, and there's 2 ways you can do it. And my personal preference is I want to focus on carry. All I care about is at what percentage, right? If I'm on this lie right here, what is this going to carry, right? So if I hit this club flat, 82 yards, I just hit it flat, what am I going to carry? Okay, so it's about 80. I know that this club's going to carry about 82 and a half yards. Okay, just from my charting. So you need to figure out what yours are going to carry and then base it off of that. The good news is if you have these wedges, regardless of the level, it's pretty much the same. So once you chart that maybe, and as you grow and you keep the same increments in terms of the 180, 60, they're going to be fairly close. You need to know exactly what those are going to go. Again, learn punch, learn full top, right? So maybe here we said we wanted to hit the punch, but we could just as easily go full top here, and hit whatever. We've got options, and really the hole is going to dictate the play. If I know, I want to limit the backspin a lot or something along those lines, maybe I choose this shot over another. Or if I want to cut through the wind a little bit more, maybe I have heavy winds. I want it to be a little bit de-lofted. Maybe I'm going to go, full top. So play around with it, learn what your releases are, but again, focus on the carry number, and then you just kind of visualize in your head what it's going to do. Once you've played these wedges enough, you'll really get a good feel as to this is what it's going to do. Another shot that I see players really, really like is they like to hit the flop a lot. And I think that's when you're starting out with your wedges, you need to play the flop more, especially if you're using starter clubs. Just because you can't get balls to bite, right? So from this number, everybody's going to play something different. 27 yards, I like to play a punch. It's very controllable in terms of spin. I'm going to go full backspin, and I know it's going to be, somewhere right in this range right here, maybe a little bit more. But I know exactly what it's going to do. It's going to hit, check, boom. So to me, that's very, very controllable. And it's all personal preference, guys. There's top players, take Jay Smithers for one. He and I have been talking a lot lately, and from this number, he's playing this shot. He's playing a pitch, right? But he knows, okay, I need to, in my head, I'm going to land it here. It's going to take 2 hops, and then it's going to, bite. I don't play this shot, so this might not go well, but definitely something, maybe I look to add in my bag as well. It's going to take a few more skips, right? And then you got to play a little bit more release. So generally, that's why I personally don't pitch below a 60 wedge. That's kind of my max that I like to. You got players like F Magnets who likes to hit the flop. Right? He's got it down. He knows exactly where he's aiming. Again, to me, I don't flop from this number just because I don't necessarily feel like it gives me the best chance to hole out. But someone like him who's practiced on it a lot, this is maybe, you know, a shot that they're extremely comfortable. So from this distance, maybe he's hitting the flop, you know, 9 times out of 10 or something. You got to play around with it and find out what works best for you. I've given you 3 players who play 3 different shots from the same exact distance, all, you know, top of their game, top-notch players. It just goes to show that there's not necessarily one way to hit a shot. You got to find your style, what works best for you, what makes you consistent, and play around with all those different shots. Pitches, flops, chips. Chips are generally, you know, from this distance, I would never hit a chip. Never in a million years would I hit a chip from this number. Okay? Now, technically, I could play like a pitching wedge chip or something. I could try to run it up, but it's very dangerous, right? Because it's not carrying hardly anywhere. And then we hit a shot like this, right? Now we find ourselves going to come back down the hill maybe a little bit. We just put ourselves in a really bad position. You got to know your undulation too, right? Especially when we're going uphill. I never want to hit a chip uphill. It's just way too inconsistent. Unless you absolutely know exactly what's going to happen. So my rule of thumb, I would say I hit a chip maybe literally 4 times a year. Not very often whatsoever. But in this version, you know, I think maybe the meta is changing a little bit. We used to pitch, right? Anywhere 4, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards, I would pitch on the flash version. Seems like with this version, it's becoming a little bit more difficult to hold those pitches. This seems to be very sensitive on those misses. So this could be something where maybe we start to see people chip a little bit more closer to the pin. But I wouldn't recommend it unless you are fairly close. I would say, you know, 10 yards and in, and you need to be very, very close to the green because it's not going to carry far, right? That's kind of the whole point of a chip. It's going to hit the ground really quick and it's going to roll. So you're basically treating it like a putt. So from here, I could play this little chip from 4 yards and all I'm doing is just reading the greens. I'm seeing what it's going to do, and I'm picturing in my head it's probably, you know, going to land somewhere between here and here, and then it rolls, and there's not a lot going on here. We're going to take out our 64 wedge. You can play around with different spins, right? Do you want this thing to release a ton? So maybe we land it a little further back, about 3-4 yards. So we go here. Maybe we just want to play a little more release to try to hold it, which I think if you're trying to hold it, you don't want to go nuts on the backspin. I'll show you why. I hit the same shot, but this time I put full back on it. It's going to be very hit and bite. The odds of me holding that out are not as good as letting it release a little bit, right? If you're looking to hole out, and again, situations dictate my shot. I know there's a lot of trouble past the pin, and releasing it could go down the hill and leave me a 7-8 footer. And yeah, maybe I'm okay putting full back and leaving myself, you know, within a 2-foot circle, and we just take our par or what have you. So again, you got to really play around with these and find out what works best. Go in the bunkers, absolutely go in the bunkers and find out, you know, what can I hit out of each shot. You know, what do I need to do to get it closer? Well, you know, yada yada yada. Play around with it a little bit. It is not letting me select anything except go. Yep, absolutely. Go in the bunker and find out what works best for you. And again, my focus is always on carry. I want to know what is it going to take for me to carry it to here, and then in my head, I'm visualizing release and things of that nature. Right, so I know that this club will go 8 yards if I flop it. I'm uphill 6, and the closer you are to this 6, normally you'll hear play it 3-1. So we play this 12, but when you're close like this, ends up being about 1.5, maybe 2-1. This is actually about 14 yards to get to here, right? And that still doesn't put me on the green. Then I know realistically I need to hit this, you know, probably somewhere around 15 yards or something like that. So that's where I would go full here. I've seen people do pitches. Flop's really not going to work out of this lie. So, and again, you're just kind of playing around with things to see, okay, where does this carry? Obviously, when you're doing this mapping, you want to do it somewhere that's a little clearer, because that elevation can play with you a little bit. But something I see a lot of players do out of the bunker is they try to get really cute with it, right? Like, oh, I can get this up. I can definitely, I'm going to hit this heroic shot and I'm going to save par, and it's going to be great. Right? You see that when I'm playing with a lot of folks who are learning the game, you'll see this a lot. I want to hit the big hero shot, and sometimes you pull it off and sometimes you don't, right? Like it worked there. And that's where I know, okay, this is how far it goes. But you'll see these guys try to hit it like, try to flop their 64 here. Okay, so going to be a hero. Not going to move the aimer. I'm just going to miss ding really early. Now you've put yourself in trouble. When you're starting off, really focus on getting out. Focus on hitting the smart shot that gets you out. Yeah, it stinks being way back here. You know what? Worst case, I'm two putting for a bogey versus now I'm here and I've got to get up and down for my. Okay, give yourself a chance at least to make. All right, so those are my tips for the short game. Really practice, map, right? Know exactly what the carry is, and then learn the release. Right? If I'm uphill, maybe I don't play as much release. If I'm going downhill, and I need to play a little bit more release on my shots. So play around with different spins. That's the biggest advice I can give you. Don't just necessarily say, okay, I hit everything with full backspin. Right? Learn your wedges. Like I said, if you're from the fairway, play a lot of neutral wedges. See how that works. If your wedges don't spin as much, maybe work on just putting a little bit of backspin until you get that grab. Really what you want to see is just kind of hit and grab. So play around with that. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I am going to be doing more videos, so if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you have any suggestions for future videos, be sure to comment down below. And of course, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications when a new video comes out.